Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Bent Myllerup. Hi Bent, welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. So Bent, on Tuesdays we talk about teams, but before we dive into the team topic, let's talk about books, because we are always looking for inspiration and new ideas.
Yes.
So Bent, share with us, what was the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
Back in the years when I was a Scrum Master, one of the books that influenced me most was this book with the title The Wisdom of Teams by Katzenbach and Smith. Because this is a book, I think it came out in the mid-90s. And at that point in time, it was probably one of the most sustainable research on teams. They have been researching thousands of teams, looking for patterns, looking for things that are influencing a team and how a team can become a high-performing team. And one of the things that I especially took away from this book was the team performance curve. This, that when a team goes through the various phases of maturity, and we probably all know the Tuckman model with forming, storming, norming, performing, and so on, what they have found from the research is that there is actually, during those phases, a dip in the performance, especially when the team goes through the storming phase here. Right. I'm often taking this with me when I'm talking with other Scrum Masters, or maybe even talking with managers about, well, when we go on this journey on implementing an agile approach, and we're trying to help a team to become a self-organized team, that there will be a point in time where you think, well, it was better in the old days. Right, because performance, not that this confusion, who's doing what and so on, this endless discussions about should we do this or do that, right? Some people might react and go back to old ways of working, old habits and so on. But I'm using this performance curve to illustrate to people that if you can just cope on being in this situation, and if you can help the team to move forward in the maturity, there is so much potential lying after this. So that's what I primarily took away from that book, The Wisdom of Teams.
Absolutely. We'll put the link on the show notes for people to find the book easily. And I think that it's also a very optimistic message, because many of us are perhaps even right now, as we listen to this episode, stuck in that dip in the curve of performance for our team. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Bent. All right, now we turn our attention to, of course, the teams themselves and how sometimes they develop the, patterns or behaviors that over time lead to problems. So tell us one of those stories. Introduce the team to us, give us a little bit of context, but then walk us through how step by step those small little details and behaviors started to grow to become a problem.
Yeah, so I once worked with a team, again, this was as an Agile coach, who worked for a company that had a running system. So a system that all the time need to run. They were living by selling data or the transportation of data. And the profit in the company came between the difference in what they paid for using the network they're using and what they got paid on. So in many ways, I can tell, it's a teleoperating company. And in that company, most of the teams at least were kind of formed around small clusters in the system landscape. So what we would call, they were component teams. And whenever something, a new feature needs to be launched, then there were so many various teams involved in that. I worked with one team that, let me give you a little context. I worked as an Agile coach. I was there like 2 days a week, right? And then I was at another client the other days. And I worked with this team, and we have given them all the trainings. We've done the team building, where we're using the market of skills exercise from Peter Lang. which is usually a very good exercise to build up trust and open up also the understanding of what are the competences and the abilities we have to maneuver. But this team was just so stuck in it that it did not move. I tried to do some sessions with the team on where we're discussing self-organization and their ability to make decisions and so on. And I also checked in with the managers, and the managers said, well, they should be a self-organized team. They can make decisions and so on. But nothing really happened. And then at some point I realized that this team was only a team the days I was present. All the other days, they were not a team. Then they were working in other teams, the participants.
How did you realize that?
Somebody shared that with me at some point, saying, well, it's hard to be a team because tomorrow I need to do this instead. So I realized that this team was not having the conditions for being a team because it's a huge investment to become a team. It's hard to commit to a shared goal with a team if you're also part of two other teams, for example.
Yeah, so like that would be a little bit the shared allocation of time, right? Like you were kind of contributing to multiple, in this case, teams or projects at the same time?
Exactly. So it was very hard for them to become a team, and also people were reluctant to lean into it, right? The good part of that story was that at some point I've been discussing this so much with the team, so the team actually, the so-called team, actually decided to resolve themselves. So they actually sent a mail to their managers, because there was also many managers involved in that, and saying, well, we are now dissolving ourselves as a team because we don't have the conditions for being a team. And then led it to the managers in the company to find another way to deal with this, and another way to deal with these tasks that this team had.
So one obvious condition to being a team is to have to be allocated to work together, right? Like, you know, that to actually be told that you are supposed to work together, right? It's not, here are the tasks, but rather work together. This is one of the reasons why Scrum has the pattern of one team working on one backlog, right? It's not one team working on 20 backlogs or every person working on their own backlog. It's not
on their
like
own
that.
backlog, yeah.
So that's one condition. But what other conditions did you look for and did not find in this team?
First of all, I obviously looked for, do we have a shared goal? Because if we don't have a shared goal, or at least a shared purpose, then it's hard to be a team. I was looking for, are people willing to contribute to other people's work?
In the same team?
In the same team, yes. Can I contribute to some of my peers' work? And no, they couldn't here because they were highly specialized. So I work with this part of the product, you work with that part of the product. And no, I have my work, you have your work.
So they worked in silos, right?
Yeah, they worked in silos. I think many of the things comes as a result of the lack of a shared goal and the lack of being able to become a team, right? But for example, do I trust my team members enough to take responsibility, right? Does my personal success, do I dare put that in the hands of other people? And these things were also missing, you could say. You can also look on, do they actually dare to disagree? Or is there like this unspoken thing? It's many years back, so it might be hard for me to remember the specific situation here, but what I would look for, are there unspoken things here, right? Are we all pretending things to be okay, or is it actually not okay anyway?
Absolutely. I would like to add a couple of things to this. Of course, we're in a Scrum podcast, so Scrum is a little bit our guide here, right? Like,
yes.
The first thing would be, do they have a backlog from which all pull work, right? So if instead of one backlog, they have like 5 backlogs, then of course that's a problem. And that would be a condition for them to be a Scrum team, at least, is to pull from one backlog. And obviously, one of the things you already talked about, can they work together on the backlog items? Or is the backlog rather more like a loose collection of work items that are personally and individually assigned, right? So I would add to that. And then, of course, the very basic Scrum cycle. Do they plan together? Do they review their outcomes and outputs together, and do they have a retrospective together? And I had quite a lot of success with teams just by going through those basics, right? Like we plan together, we show our work together, and we pull from one backlog. And finally, we always have a retrospective at the end of the sprint. So I think that on top of the things that you said, because we're talking about Scrum specifically here, I think it's important for us to review the basics with the team. And as that team said, if the conditions are not there, then it's better to send out an email saying, hey, we don't have the conditions to be a team, so we're dissolving our team.
That we should, as Scrum Masters, also help the team to get beyond the basics. But we also need to get the basics to work, because the basics following, and maybe in the beginning, very blindly, the Scrum framework, go step by step, can also give us the experience that it works. In the beginning, when we are less mature as a team, we get a lot out of following the basics. The more mature we get, the more we can also begin to challenge the basics. That's kind of the shuhari on this journey here, I would say.
Absolutely. And it is a journey, as we very often mention here on the podcast. Thank you for sharing the story, Bent.
You're welcome.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.